Welcome back to Leaving the Lies and Speaking Your Truth. We were on episode number 7, part 2. We left off with warning signs you or someone you know is in a cult. We are on YouTube and Facebook, Leaving the Lies and Speaking Your Truth. We ask you to subscribe, to like, and to share. We would like to remind you that this is a place of positivity. This is a place of safety. If you have anything negative or hurtful to say, they will be, the comments will be taken down. We are going to start back with how and when people leave a cult. Melody, you want to take us into that?
Yep. How and when people leave. Getting out of a cult is much more difficult than getting in. Most of the time, cult members are not actually being held captive by gates and fences. Usually it's more of a mental prison. In most cases, people, when they're ready to leave, they're not going to share these thoughts or doubts within the group because they are usually made to feel guilty and pressured to stay. And most of the time, if you're getting ready to leave a cult, you're going to set up a plan in secret. You're going to be doing this behind closed doors, and nobody's going to know that you're making this plan, except maybe if you've reconnected with some people from the outside world. Those people might know. And because if you were to make these plans known that you're getting ready to leave, they would pressure you and try to talk you out of it and guilt you. In extreme cases, there are some cults that actually do hold people against their will. And I know, like, for example, I know Scientology has a place called The Hole where they hold people that are not conforming. And it's like kind of like being in jail. It's like their version of jail. And most people that experience stress or anxieties within the group, those people are much more likely to get out or leave a cult. Mostly to ease that anxiety. Most cults do start out with good intentions. What usually goes wrong is what usually goes wrong with everything else, the leadership.
Yes.
Good examples of that in cults would be Jim Jones and the People's Temple. Most of those people were there trying to do the right thing. They had good intentions. They were good people. And what went wrong was Jim Jones had an inflated ego, and when things weren't going the way he wanted to, or he saw that they were going to be getting into some trouble, he wanted to take the whole group down with him. And another good example of that would be Charles Manson. They called that cult ultimately in the media the Family. I don't know if they coined that term or he did, but they called themselves the Family, or the Moonies. And I don't have this one written down, but what was the one? Do you remember the name of the cult that actually all committed suicide, and they thought they were going into outer space or something? It wasn't the Moonies. It was another one, and I can't think of the name of it right now. It's not coming to me, but somebody out there is saying it right now.
The old man with the white robe.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't think of the name of that group for whatever reason. But that would be another example of where the leadership has taken over, and the leadership is where it has gone wrong. Because it goes with the old saying or the old adage that absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Here's the thing I would like to add to that, Melody.
Absolutely.
The house of Yahweh, for all intents and purposes, the actual house of Yahweh is not a bad place. It's when Yeshua got a hold of it and started teaching that he was to sit at the right-hand side of God, and that he was important, and that he was, it went Yahweh then him. So say you have 100 people in the house of Yahweh right now. Probably only 6 of them are bad, and the rest of the people are really good people with really great intentions.
Yep.
Please, I cannot stress this enough. Please, please, please remember this when dealing with a cult situation.
Absolutely. There's usually a few bad apples, and usually it's the people that end up at the top and end up in power, because the good people, as they get closer and closer to the top and they actually start to see what's happening, those good people tend to bail. They're like, whoa.
Yes.
They're what? Whoa, I didn't know this is what was going on here. And when they start to see what's really going on behind the curtain, they're ready to run.
Yes.
Another thing is that you will start to question the teachings and you will start to wake up. And I'm going to share a story, personal story about this with me. I remember very specifically my last feast that I was there, and I had started waking up and I was questioning. And I remember sitting in the sermons and listening to some of the stuff Yeshua was saying, and I didn't believe anymore. I didn't believe, and I was like, I started like looking around, like looking at this, instead of looking at him giving the sermon, I was looking in the crowd like, who else? Who else can see this? Who else is waking up? Does anybody else see that this is a bunch of crap? I was like trying to find my people. Who sees it? I was like, I was really waking up, and I wanted to see who else was waking up, who else was seeing this. Because I left, I had the luxuries to some degree of leaving at a time what they called the great falling away. So I was able to find other people that were waking up at the same time, because it was when they were introducing a new extreme teaching. They were starting to teach the multiple marriage. And when you introduce extreme beliefs or teachings like that, you do tend to have people that will leave in groups more so than just individuals. You can have a traumatic event that might help or cause you to want to leave, whether it's the loss of a loved one. You might become ill because of something that they're teaching you that you need to do, or you might witness some type of abuse or assault that would cause you to want to leave. And I know of some specific stories. I'm not going to mention names, but I know that there are people that have left for some of these very specific reasons. And because, if you believe that you're there and for example, your wife can't die or get cancer because you're in the house of Yahweh, that doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden your wife gets cancer and you keep praying and praying that she's not going to die. And you believe that you're protected because you're in the house of Yahweh, and then she dies. It's like, snap. Something just like that. Something you can wake up that quick and be like, I don't believe anymore. You just that quick. And some people just get to the point where they've had enough. They just want to leave because they can't take anymore, and they are all used up and they're worn out. And they might leave because a prophecy doesn't come to pass, like you were talking about before, that they predicted tribulation was going to start on this day, it didn't start, I'm gone. Or they predicted it for the third time and it didn't start, so I'm gone. Some people have a psychological breakdown. They might become convinced that they're completely unworthy of the group and will never be able to meet the expectations. Some people leave to spare their family embarrassment. If they're in the group or the cult with their family, and they've committed some type of perceived sin or transgression against the group, and they don't want to bring that shame upon their family, they may leave for that reason. And Autumn, I think we're going to split, because we ended up doing this in 2 episodes. I think we should split this, and you should not only read the next section, but maybe start some of the recovering and healing afterwards. Just maybe do like the first 3, because I'm going to feel like I'm doing all the talking in this episode otherwise. We good with that?
You sure, Mel?
Okay, thanks.
No, seriously.
I know we didn't practice it that way, but we're just going to wing it. We're not professionals.
Guys, here's the little thing between me and Melody. You get 2 people together. Typically, it ends up that they're fighting for who's in charge. I think Melody got the most passive partner. She's like, Ariel, I think we should do this. I think we should do this. And I think we should do this. Sounds good.
Hey, I'm not a cult leader.
No, I will admit, this is going as well as it goes, not because of me, but because of that woman right there. I just sit there and go, yep, sounds good. I can do it, All right. The after effects of leaving a cult. And this is very, very important that this really be heard and listened to. Some experts are not aware or even deny the difficulties many people face after leaving a cult. Some people can leave a cult with very little to no after effects and manage to get on with their normal lives fairly quickly. After leaving, most people are likely to suffer from the following: depression, anxiety, panic attacks, guilt, fear, paranoia, lack of interest, passiveness, and memory issues. It is a proven fact that in traumatic experiences, in abusive experiences, people almost leave their mind and go to a separate area and forget everything that took place. They are not lying to you when they say, I don't remember or I don't know. When
Absolutely, and that's a self-preservation thing.
Yes, absolutely. And when they come out and they tell you somebody's following me. Did you see that? That's not them over exaggerating. That's not them being drama queen. And in my mind, and when you do an interview with Philip, he will touch on this. In my mind, I was being followed. Now, at times were there people that were from the House of Yahweh that were following me? Absolutely. But every time I said it, no. It was my own paranoia from that. It is very important that I'm going to read these one more time, Melody, so
Absolutely.
that they can really hear it. Depression, anxiety, panic attacks, guilt, fear, paranoia, lack of interest, passiveness, and memory issues. Many people who leave a cult go through a period of time where they have one foot still in the cult and one foot still out. And this can last for days, months, or even years, depending on the person and the level of brainwashing they suffered from. One psychologist, Michael Langone, described this as floating, where you go back and forth between the cult way of thinking and independent thinking. Some people that leave a cult are never able to fully recover and suffer negative effects for the rest of their lives. And I just want to touch on this for just a moment. What is taking place when people leave a cult? Let's just say you get into a car accident. You're a month out and you get into a car accident. Their mind is clicking. I got into a car accident. My car is destroyed because I left Yahweh.
You're conditioned. You're conditioned to have that
Yes.
reaction. Yep.
Or because I left the place. They're doing this. Or your child all of a sudden is a teenager and is telling you, no, I don't want to do my chores. You're being this way because I'm being punished for leaving. So what is taking effect is, you can't go back to that place because you know it's wrong. But you can't be where you are. So maybe I should go back. No, maybe I should stay. Maybe I should go back. And you're constantly just spiraling out of control, and you can't grasp a hold of your life. You can't find a strong enough foundation to hold you tight, to keep you going strong. And that's why it's very, very, very important. If you have loved ones that are coming out of a cult situation, an abusive period situation, you must be their foundation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you got to leave that open, that line of communication still open for them to express those doubts without making them feel guilty for having those doubts, because it's a normal internal struggle. And I would just reassure them to keep doing critical thinking and keep analyzing the situation. Is that really what you want? Remember the reasons why you left, and have them, just assure them that that they have the capability to work it out for themselves. You can help them, but also give them encouragement to start that critical thinking back up again.
And not only that, again, it goes back to fighting fire with fire. I will support you no matter what.
Absolutely.
I have you. Because even though you may not necessarily support them, that lets them know, whoa, wait a minute, they're supporting me, but they said they wouldn't, that I was going to burn in hell damnation. Yep. Which also makes people think, just because you tell something right now, they're going to think about it later on that night or later on that day, what you've said.
Yep, absolutely.
Vitally, vitally important that you really learn about the after effects.
Yep. And some people that will eventually will cause them to go back if they don't have that really good foundation. In some cases, even years later, if something happens that is a trigger for them, and it triggers all that fear and that anxiety to come back, they may return to the group in order to relieve that fear.
And the sad truth is, Melody, is that we know.
Yeah, we know it happens.
And so yes, it's very true, because the sad truth is that we know people that have done that.
The other option is we could kind of go back and forth on these. I'm pretty open. You want me to do the opening and then go back and forth on the? Is that what you
whatever want? You want to
okay.
do? What Coming to America? Whatever
okay.
you want.
Okay, I'll start out just by recovering after leaving a cult. We'll start with saying that, first of all, you expect to have a lot of what I call aha moments. That's kind of my coined term. Especially if you start educating yourself about cults and how they work. You will understand after the fact, when you start reading or watching documentaries, or Leo Remini's show, for example. You might find or realize that the cult or the leader did or said certain things that seemed really innocent or benign or unimportant at the time. But in hindsight, after you start learning about how cults work and the way in which they manipulate you, systematically get you to start following, you're like, oh, you start understanding that, oh, that wasn't an innocent statement. There was more to that than I realized at the time. And because if your mind doesn't work in that kind of manipulative, devious way, you assume that other people aren't thinking that way either. And then when you leave and you realize you were dealing with an egotistical, arrogant psychopath, that they do think that way. They do think that. Narcissist, that's the other word I was looking for. When you're dealing with a narcissist and somebody who thinks that way, you realize everything they do is kind of calculated and cunning, and it's all for a purpose that they may not even need that, or they may not use it immediately. They may be grooming you for something that's coming weeks or months down the road. And then you're like, whoa, where did this come from? But they've been preparing you for it, preparing you to accept it, even if your mind is telling you not to. So I'll have you're going to go ahead.
Some people do go through cult deprogramming. Most do not. It only works about 40% of the time. And
it's really kind of an old school method.
Yeah.
I don't think many people do that anymore, but I did want to keep it in there because I do know that a lot of people that have heard of cults have heard of deprogramming as well.
Yes.
And a good idea, like we've talked about already, but we're going to cover it again, is to surround yourself with people from your past that knew you before you were in the cult and start to rebuild those emotional connections. Because even though the cult may teach you or have you conditioned to believe that you're not going to be supported and that you're not going to get that love and acceptance out in the world or outside of the group, there are people out there. Your family loves you. There are even people who don't know you are going to care about you and reach out to you and try to help you. And that is super important, especially like we were just talking about, to stay out. To stay out. When you feel that support and that connection, it helps you to start building a new foundation to stand on.
May I add to that?
Absolutely.
And if somebody does come to you saying, hey, I just got out of cult, worst thing you can do is 21 questions. Just say, okay. And typically when they bring that up with me, if I bring that up, it's because I trust you enough. And sometimes I'll have people say, oh, I got 1,000,001 questions. Sometimes I'll say, okay, well, what are some of them? And other times I'm like, that's good. I feel like we're in the part of our relationship where I've got to kind of open that up to you. Don't ask questions unless they say to you, you can ask.
Absolutely. And some people are going to be more open about that than others. It may depend on exactly what they experienced, how long they were there, their personality, how open they are. There's a lot of factors that are going to play in that.
Right. Therapy and counseling. This is very important that you get therapy and counseling. This is not always available, but you can usually find ways to get help. Let me say this. Any mental health facility that you go into, if you tell them, hey, this is what's going on, I need help, typically they do have a support group. Almost it's kind of like the AA, groups, but it's support groups for cult survivors. I know when my father died, I went to a death survivor, death of a loved one survivor group, and it was absolutely free. Yep. Another great thing is to go to a church. Even if you don't want to go to that church, don't go to the church. Call them up. Do you have a therapist? 9 out of, if it's a big enough church, they will have one, and they'll charge at most $75. And if they hear that you don't have money, but they hear your story, they'll do a sliding scale.
Yep. And I know that I think there's a lot of towns and stuff too that also have third level crisis centers that usually do the same thing. A third level crisis center is usually income based therapy. And if you have no income, you probably won't be paying anything for the therapy.
Right.
Another option is online support groups, or support groups in general. And even if it's only online, even if that's all you're comfortable with, just reaching out and getting that support from other people who've had similar experiences can make all the difference in the world. I've also heard about seminars that are available for people that have come out of cults. I'm semi-interested in attending one, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe someday. But I did hear one that was happening over on the East Coast, and I thought it was... I was just thrilled to know it was out there. I'm like, this is a thing? They have seminars to help people that have come out of cults? I think that's awesome.
Yes, really. Educate yourself on how cults work, because this does help you to forgive yourself and ease some guilt or self-esteem issues. Here's the thing. It is very, 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 very important that you forgive yourself. Because what people don't realize is if you don't forgive yourself, you begin to hold resentment towards yourself, which builds into anger, which builds into other anxiety, depression. Other things stem from that. There's never a woulda, coulda, shoulda. It's never going to happen that way for you. So what you need to do is actually educate. The more you know. Like they used to say on Saturday morning cartoons, the more you know. You can do this with books, documentaries, TV talk shows, Google. You can go into any Barnes and Nobles, a library, and just sit down in the middle of the aisle and read. The more you read, the more you look up, the more you'll go, wait a minute now. I'm not the only one that fell into this trap. Exactly. And here is the absolute truth. From one cult member to another who may be going through this, you cannot forgive yourself. Here's the truth. It's not my fault.
Yep.
I am a good person. I am a good mother.
You were a victim.
Yes, I am I like to call myself a survivor, and my self-worth has no value because that's how worthy I am.
Absolutely.
And that's what you need to tell yourself. And trust me, there's still days that I go, did I do the right thing? Man, I should have. Man, I would have. You can't do it. Forgive yourself.
Yep, exactly. Connecting with other people who've left a cult, especially your own cult, but with any cult, because that was I actually started a specific support group for Axe House of Yahweh members after I left, because it was important for me to reconnect with other people who had left the group, because I knew nobody was going to understand me better than them. Nobody was going to understand what I went through better than them. And that's perfect example is why you and I are still friends. Because we live the same hell. And when you do that, you build a bond, and that bond is there. And with those people that have left your cult, whatever your cult may be, they're going to have similar stories, and you're going to bond. You're going to still be bonded, and it gives you an amount of fellowship that you had within the group, even outside of the group, because those people are going to understand you in a different way, a unique way. And connecting with other people that have been in cults, what that does is that you start to learn that there's a playbook. You start to learn that, oh wow, that happened in my group too, or something very similar to that. My group did it this way, or and then you're like, wow, do these cults all get the same book in the mail of how to run a cult, and they all seem to follow it? Because are you amazed? Like, I did not know hardly anything about Scientology until Leo Remini's show came out, and I'm watching it, I'm like, this all sounds like it could be the House of Yahweh, just with a different name. There's so many similarities that it's uncanny. And I'm like, that's crazy. That is crazy to me that there's so many similarities in the way these cults work. But another good reason for us to be doing this show right now, because it is interesting to learn that, because if you know that, you're less susceptible to falling into a potentially another one.
Exactly. Absolutely. No, I think you should read the last one also.
Okay.
Because you do have so much experience with each one of these things.
Okay. I don't think not all of them, but some. The last one is speaking out, whether that's keeping a journal, writing a book, creating a blog, starting a podcast or a Facebook group like we've done here. All of these things can be very therapeutic. Autumn and I doing this right now is therapeutic for us. This is our way of almost like giving back. It's like something was taken from us, and we want to give back to anybody who's in a similar situation, anybody who's currently in a cult that wants to come out, anybody who's left a cult and is looking for connections and answers. Being able to provide even just a little bit of that support and helping others it just helps with the healing process. It's very therapeutic for me anyway. And I assume for you too. And I assume that's part of the reason you're doing this with me.
Well, I'll be real honest with you. I came to you with this idea, Melody, because I became fearful about the whole pigweed and cricket thing.
Right. That's where it started.
But when I found out that they were listening, then it became, because you know me so well, then it became a matter of, what are you going to do now?
It's morphed into, it's taken on a life of its own a little bit.
Yes, I am, in the Bible, so they will understand it. They're Goliath and I'm King David, and now I got the slingshot. And, come on, let's play a game.
Yeah.
But
it gives you some of your power back. It makes you feel, you go from feeling powerless, and when you start to reach out and speak out, it gives you some of that power back. You know that you're driving your own car again.
Exactly. I like that. And one of the greatest things that I got to, I might get a little emotional with this one. I spoke to somebody when we first started doing this. She got a hold of me, and for almost 30 years, she held on to some guilt. It was concerning me and my ex-husband, and what a jerk he is. But she held on to that guilt because she felt so guilty, because he was grooming her, because he was playing with her mind. He was making her think that everything was her fault. And she, honest to God, believed that she was an awful person because Eudidia wanted her to. For 30 some years, she carried this shame and this guilt around Melody. And when she told me about it, I was like, are you kidding me? Honey, this wasn't you. You didn't even do anything wrong. You just tried to be my friend. You did nothing wrong. And she was so distraught and so upset. The greatest gift I got was when she said, I finally feel better. I was That's like, awesome. If nothing else, I'm so thankful that woman finally has a peace of mind to know she did absolutely nothing wrong.
Absolutely. And the truth is, even the people who do things that are quote unquote wrong, when they're in there, it's usually under the guise of believing it's right at the time. It's under the guise of believing you're doing the right thing because you're not thinking straight. You're thinking in that cult mentality, and you're doing things that go against your own intuition. You're like, oh, well, this doesn't feel right, but they're telling me I should do this. They're telling me I need to do this. I need to accept this. And you go against some of what your own instincts tell you to do. And
Yeah.
that's, that even if you did something bad, it's still not your fault. It's still not your fault.
Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely.
So, I think, are you ready to close?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to add one thing.
Go ahead.
Be kind. Be positive. Be uplifting and be forgiving to those that may be coming out, but not only to those that may be coming out, but to yourself.
Oh, very good. Very good. Absolutely. I love that. And in closing, I first of all want to thank Autumn for being my lovely co-host today and for joining me. I do want to thank everybody else who's watching here. And again, we do have a Facebook page called Leaving the Lies and Speaking Your Truth. If you enjoyed our broadcast, please go to our YouTube page, like, share, and subscribe. We want to reach as many people as we can because the more we are out there, the more people we can help. And that is the goal here, is to help as many people as we can, whether it's people in a cult, whether it's people coming out of a cult, or whether it's people that have family members in a cult, or if you're just curious. If you're just curious and you want to know about cults, guess what? Watching something like this and learning and educating yourself may prevent you from being in a cult one day. So
absolutely.
And having said that, also anybody out there who may be thinking about doing an interview with us, we would love to hear from you. We're looking for people who want to share their stories. And even if you think you don't have a story, even if you're only there for 6 months, you've got a story and we want to hear it. So reach out to us, send us either Autumn or myself, or Ariel. I should say Ariel because that's what her Facebook is under. That's how you're going to find her. Ariel or myself in private message, or feel free to leave us a message on the group and we will reach out to you and get back to you as soon as we can. So we look forward to hopefully getting more interviews soon, and thank you very much for joining us today. Bye, everyone.
Bye.